And hello, everybody. Some dead air there. Sorry about that. This is Chuck Horton, your host tonight from Double Cross Radio. Thank you again to Jordan Page and his awesome intro music. Well, tonight we have a fabtabulous show. Fabtabulous, yes. I meant to say that. And we're going to be covering, among other things, the growing number of expats, United States of America expats around the world. And let me get my volume turned up just a little bit here. Doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like we're loud enough out there. Let's see what we have here. Just my monitor controls. This is what happens when you have a business and you're kind of late getting home. There we go. And you get sliding into your seat with not really having dinner, and I'm not whining or complaining. I loved having this show, and thank you, Jules, for giving us this opportunity to have UCY radio and Double Cross Radio on the UCY network. It's just been an awesome experience these 3 years, and I can't wait for the next 3 years. By the way, as we're getting this show started, just in case some of you get bored and fall asleep, and I want to announce that Jeffrey Tucker has confirmed that August 6th he will be our guest. That's next Thursday. He's going to be our special guest on Double Cross Radio, and we're going to talk about, well, actually, he's been the subject for the last 2 weeks. The great articles he wrote about the Donald Trump speech at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas, and then the follow-up to that, which he wrote, and that one went viral. All the reactions to it is in many major magazines covered that. And then the follow-up to that was kind of using the F word, and by that I mean fascism, not the other one. People don't really understand what fascism really is in this country. They think it means that you hate Jews or something, and it has nothing to do with that. It's an economic way of organizing society where corporations really vie for political influence because that gives them unfair competitive advantages over the in the free market, where they're able to get concessions and laws that are made that benefit them more than their competitors, and so then they're able to succeed where their competitors find it much less profitable. So if you don't think that's how our economic system is working in this country, you go back and read the Obamacare bill. That's how that was written by insurance companies for the benefit of insurance companies at the expense of everybody else. The doctors hate it. Patients hate it. I think even the insurance agents hate it because it really I don't know what the right word to say this. It really makes them into scoundrels. I mean, they're by guilt by association. People say, "How could you sell me this piece of crap insurance policy?" Well, that's pretty much all they are because there's just one policy for everybody now. So if you're a single guy and you're getting insurance, you're covered in case you get pregnant. Whoa! So there you go. And likewise, there's certain male afflictions that females will be covered for. It's just I'm not saying that pregnancy is an affliction, although some of you may read those thoughts into my words. I have no intent to make that comment. But on with the show here. I'm going to get myself in real trouble if I keep talking, just gabbing on. The other things, and I get to get my cheat sheet up here so I remember what I'm going to talk about tonight. The other things we're going to be talking about tonight, we have this growing number of expats, and we want to just kind of compare the United States to other places around the world and just how free is the United States anymore. I mean, when I was growing up until maybe sometime in the mid-1990s, maybe towards the end of the 20th century, the United States was pretty much always one or two in the world in terms of any freedom index that you chose to use. It was always right up there at the top, and we had a really high standard of living. And then we started immersing ourselves in all these wars, and we started losing a lot of our freedoms. And so we're going to talk about that too tonight. And And we're also going to talk about where in the world out there can you find your dream? They used to call it the American dream, but now I would just call it just the dream that people have. I mean, a lot of people want to own their own home. A lot of people want to be able to keep what they earn with the sweat of their own, sweat of their own brow. Just if this is your blood, sweat, and tears that goes into this, what claim does anybody else have on that? Is any claim that they put on it, isn't that just the same as theft? And so where in the world can you have less theft, be able to keep more of what you produce, be able to truly own your own home? And maybe there aren't any places, but maybe you can be more free than you are here. Maybe you don't have people listening in on your phone calls in these countries. Maybe you don't have people reading all your email. Maybe you don't have politicians that sick federal agencies on you if you speak up and protest. I don't know. But there are people who do. There are people who do make these studies year in and year out, and they rate the countries as to which ones are the freest places. And we're gonna fill out a freedom index, and we'll see. This is one where you rate the things that are most important to you. And I'll leave a link to this on our Facebook page for Double Cross Radio. And if you go there and you check this out, you can find out the place that's going to be ideal for you. I mean, for some people, gun rights are the most important thing. They don't want to go anywhere where there aren't, because they think that all other rights are protected by gun rights. Well, I kind of see the logic in that, but I think we lost our gun rights a long time ago when American citizens were deprived the right of having ICBMs and nuclear weapons. They were totally outgunned by their government, and there's no way that just being able to have a deer rifle or even a semi-automatic MR-16, there's no way that's going to compete with a tank, heat-seeking missiles, people that they have air supremacy. They can drop these 1,000-pound bombs on you that they aren't really explosive, but they'll just crush your house. And they can pinpoint those things, read them in with a laser, and just drop them. They can drop them right on target every single time. There's no way you can compete with that kind of military power. And so we lost the rights to gun rights that are meaningful a long time ago. Now gun rights are more specifically designed just to protect yourself from thugs, because the government police certainly don't do a good job. But you can rate that as something that's very high to you, and certainly other people may have a different view of that than I do. I admire the people that really are very adamant about their gun rights. Both Drew and David, who were my former co-hosts, I think that that was one of the qualities in them that I admired. I did not necessarily share that, but I thought that their passion was amazing. Drug rights. There's some, it might be really important to some people. They want to be able to put in their body what they want to. But I think everybody should be really should care about something like drug rights, because if you allow someone to tell you what you can't put in your body, you're implicitly allowing them to tell you what you have to put in your body. And if you don't think that isn't coming down the road, well, you probably didn't follow very closely Michelle Obama's school lunch program and things like that, where she was forcing children to eat stuff that they just didn't want to eat. It wasn't good. It was not healthy. Some of the food was rotten, but that's what they had to eat. And if they didn't, they got in trouble. For some people, property rights are going to be important, or freedom from taxes. I think those are kind of the same thing, because what you produce is your property. So freedom of speech and religion, limited government. How about no government? But I don't think that would sell very well. There's too many people who think you have to have a government. They've been brainwashed into that. Freedom from corruption. Now, that's going to happen. I think the only way you can have freedom from corruption is give the government no power. And then it doesn't matter. The corruption will flee the government because there's no way they can use that power to steal money from other people. So they'll go into they'll go back to highway robbery and stuff like that. As long as you have power in your government, you're going to have corruption. It just attracts corrupt people like a magnet attracts iron ore filings when you drag it along the beach. Okay, freedom from inflation. Well, gosh, that's kind of property freedom again, because inflation is just another form of taxation. And if you have property in it, and that property is in the form of cash and money, and suddenly it's devalued, they've stolen your property because it has lost its purchasing power. So that's just another form of property rights. And then business freedom, I guess, gosh, don't we all just love all those regulations and forms and things we have to fill out when you want to start a building or a business, and you have to pay a city for a license, which is just a revenue generating thing. They don't give you anything for the $100 or $200 you have to pay. And then you have to be inspected, and you have to make sure you don't have any code violations, and Of course, those are all for the public good. Yes, they are. And unfortunately, the only people that really get served by all this are the people who pocket the money from the licenses and the fines and the code violations and everything else. So we'll do that form, that index together in just a little bit, and I'm going to get on with the show now. In the world, there's in almost every nice place in the world, I'll put it that, a place, and I describe nice places, a place relatively free of crime with a nice climate, fairly inexpensive cost of living. I don't know what else to say. They have modern conveniences, so they're able to, get on the internet and have high-speed internet. In most places like this around the world, you'll find fairly large American expat communities. We've had guests on our show that were former residents of the United States. Gabriel Shears down in Chile. James Guzman is in San Miguel de Allende, and we're going to have a link to some of his stuff today too, because I think he started a fabulous debate on his Borderless page, and it was just amazing contributions from the people that are hooked into that. James is a great guy. He has a great business service that he has. If you ever want to check out San Miguel de Allende, you would be doing yourself a great service to purchase his services, and you'll get your money back maybe twofold, because he'll get you an inexpensive place to stay. It's still very high quality. He'll find you great places to eat. You can arrange for dental and medical treatments. He'll get you transportation to and from wherever you want to. He'll hook you up with lawyers and bankers and people who speak English that can help you should you decide you want to stay or purchase property or whatever. So, you want to remember that name, and you want to get in touch with him if you're ever going to travel into that area of Mexico. It's very beautiful. It's up in the mountains, and it's got a fairly stable climate year-round. I would call it almost like a perpetual spring. There's a drier spring and a wetter spring, and the temperature stays pretty much the same. So that's a 365-day year growing season. What's not to like? Get fresh food, fresh, nutritious food all the time, and that volcanic soils that are up there that are rich in minerals, and they're very nutritious. It'll help you live longer and stay healthier. There's a lot of pluses about that place. They also have a fairly large expat community, and it's not all from the United States. They're from all around the world. There's a lot of people that come there from other countries too, because it's such a beautiful place, and it's has a wonderful culture. A lot of artists and authors and photographers and people that make their living with kind of promoting cultures through the arts. There's a lot of those people there too, so it's really a fabulous place. And there's lots of places like this around the world. You just have to go look for them. And that one might not be the place for you, but maybe Panama will have a place for you. There's similar type climate zones there, maybe a little more rugged. It's maybe you'd like to be more in a Caribbean climate, Playa del Carmen, or maybe one of the Caribbean islands. Jeff Berwick has he's kind of got a condo place that's they're selling condominiums, and it operates also as a hotel. So if you decide you don't want to stay there year round, you could live in Cancun 3 months at a time, and the rest of the time when you're not there, you could rent out your condominium as a hotel room and have an income that helps pay for expenses. They have Gabriel Scheer. He lives down in Chile. He's more in I would say in a climate zone that's similar to, well, it's fairly similar to the Pacific Northwest, where it may be not quite, it may be a little warmer, maybe a little drier, maybe more like Southern Oregon, Northern California. And I mean Northern California, I mean San Francisco, I mean like up in close to the Oregon border. And it kind of depends. You can change your climate in Chile quite a bit by just going a little bit up the mountain or a little bit down the mountains. It changes drastically. Fabulous vistas in Chile. They have awesome food there again. Lots and lots of wine, really high quality wine is coming out of Chile. If you like to ski, they have some amazing ski places there. So there's a lot to like about Chile. And there's some other places where you can go and live that may not be, they may not rate very high on a freedom index, but they still might be a pretty nice place to live if you are on a fixed income, if you're retired. Last year in April, we spent time in Ecuador. And Ecuador is named because it's on the equator. And so you'd think, oh, it's hot there. Well, if you're down on the coast, yeah, it's pretty warm. But we spent all our time up in the mountains at the capital in Quito. And Quito is about 8,000 feet above sea level. It runs about, in degrees Fahrenheit, it runs between 60 and 70 degrees pretty much every day. Generally more in the 60 to 65 range, but sometimes, some days it'll be warmer. You can count on a potential rainstorm almost every day. But it doesn't mean it's going to rain, but there's always going to be the potential for one. They're kind of little squalls that kind of blow over, and they'll rain somewhere in that high plateau, but maybe not where you are. There's also there's a beautiful city a little bit south of Quito, and that is Cuenca. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I had to mute my microphone and get a throat clearing cough in. Anyway, in Cuenca, I think there's over 5,000 American expats living there. A lot of them are on Social Security. They have, basically on $2,000 a month. I think you could live a pretty good lifestyle in Cuenca, and it's a pretty nice place. The immediate city is kind of straddles a river that runs through it, and it's not a huge river. It's a kind of a small river. You could probably walk across it knee deep, but quite a bit of water is running down, and you're up in the mountains, so it's not just a real slow moving river. It's if you slipped and fell, you could easily be swept way downstream. But there's a ton of interesting stuff to do there. Food you can pretty much eat out every day. My wife and I, when we were there, we were eating really well. The hotel where we stayed furnished a breakfast, and then we would eat one more meal during the day, generally for less than $10 for both of us. And that was how much we spent on food every day. And we didn't have, we bought some fruits and vegetables and would snack on them in our room with maybe some wine or something. In the evening, we'd sit around and talk about the day and look at the pictures we had taken and stuff like that. It's a nice place. I could live there. But if you still have something left in you, you think you want to be working and doing stuff and whatever, Ecuador wouldn't be my first choice. It wouldn't be my top 10 choices. It wouldn't probably be my top 20 choices. But if you're on a fixed income and you just want to live out your remaining years when you could live at a little higher standard of living than you can in the United States, Ecuador is a fine place to be. It's not perfect, and you certainly want to live close to other Americans, I think, because there's not a lot of people there speaking English. But anyway, my point was there's a lot of other places in the world to live where you can be happier than you are here in the United States. And it doesn't mean you're not an American, or it doesn't mean you're un-American. It just means that, I mean, is it important to sacrifice your own personal happiness for the good of the country? I mean, I don't think the country cares a crap about what happens to you. They certainly have no... I mean, the United States is the only country in the world where its senior citizens, these are people who are too old really to work anymore, but the senior citizens are imprisoned for not filling out a form. Usually this form is going to be a tax form, but there's other forms that they need to fill out, and the penalty for not filling them out is to be imprisoned. And they will make examples out of people routinely and sometimes repeatedly. I don't know if any of you are aware of Peter Schiff, but his dad, Irwin Schiff, is a tax protester, and he basically had his freedom of speech denied him, and he's been in prison since the time he was arrested until today, and for the immediate future. He's probably going to die in prison. He's given a life sentence, in other words, for just exercising his freedom of speech and saying that the tax code was unconstitutional, it was an illegal act, and he was just protesting something that is probably true. And everything that I've read says that what he was saying was there was nothing untrue about anything he said, but he still was put in prison. So there's reasons why some people choose not to put up the fight, not to go stand on their soapbox, and the closer they get to the truth, the closer they get to pulling back the curtain on these people that are pulling all the wires and levers and kind of running the country behind the scenes. And I'm not talking about the politicians. I'm talking about the people who run the politicians. We don't know who they are. We have some good ideas who they might be. But when we take a good look at all that, and we find that wow, there's really some good reasons not to be here if you're retired. I mean, you really have lost your chance to, I mean, you're pretty much dependent on Social Security if your income, and if you start to speak out and do something, then maybe they'll find a way to deny you benefits. And you say, well, they can't do that. I played into that system. Well, they can do whatever they want today. They threaten military people routinely with losing their military pensions if they speak out against, politically against what's going on in this country. And the generals, one by one, they just shut up because they don't want to lose that gravy train. I mean, they know that they will not have a great impact on anybody, and that all they'll do is cause themselves personal financial losses, which they can't afford. So they just shut their mouth and go play golf. Well, some people, and I want you to know that the number of expats, and to be an expatriate means that you renounce your citizenship. Now, some people think that retirees that go to a place like Cuenca and live are really expats also, but no, if you still retain your citizenship, your U.S. passport, which is kind of, the whole idea of passports is also kind of ridiculous. Why should you need permission to travel? Isn't that a freedom? Is there some reason why the United States could come and take away your passport? And you say, oh, they won't do that. Hey, they've been doing this since the 1950s. There was an American scientist, and I'm not going to tell you his name until the end of this story, but he had already won one Nobel Prize in chemistry, and he was very, very close to unlocking the structure to DNA, to finding out what what eventually was described as a double helix, what it really was. And there were some advances in X-ray photography that had been taking place in England, where eventually these Watson and Crick discovered this structure. And this American scientist was denied his passport. They took his passport away, so he could not leave the country. He was basically under country arrest. He had to stay in the country. He could not leave. And why was he in country arrest? Because he had protested against open air testing of atomic weapons. And for that, he was denied a passport. He was not allowed to go to Britain to look at these X-ray photographs. And this man was probably the premier chemical structure of substances person in the world. He got his Nobel Prize in chemistry for discovering the structure of hemoglobin and enabled people to be able to be given transfusions with plasma. It saved millions of lives in the wars. It's an amazing discovery. And of course, Linus Pauling. He's a fellow Oregonian, grew up in Baker, Oregon, attended school in a one-room schoolhouse through 8th grade. And then his family moved to Portland. He attended a public school. I believe it was Lincoln High School in Portland, but I might be wrong. So if I'm wrong, forgive me. I didn't look up this stuff beforehand. I really hadn't planned to talk about Linus Pauling. This is all from memory. He then graduated with honors, went on to get a chemistry degree at Oregon State University, which is my alma mater. I attended many a chemistry lecture in the Pauling building that was named in his honor at Oregon State. And actually it was Pauling Hall, I think was the technical name for it. And that was the home of the School of Chemistry. He went on and he did a lot of his work at Caltech down in California. I believe it was Caltech. Again, I apologize if I get some of these facts wrong. And there's where he's made his discoveries that led to the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. And he was working on DNA and the double helix, how the structure of DNA, how it could account for genetic transmission of physical traits that we observe. Well, they denied him a passport in the 1950s because he was exercising his freedom of speech, just like Irwin Schiff, who was put in prison. So don't think that it can't happen to you. And don't think they won't lower the bar on reasons for refusing somebody a passport. It can happen. And so you might want to have a kind of an escape plan, because when they start coming for people, if you've been shooting off your mouth like I do, you're probably going to be one of the first people they come for. So I've kind of got this in the back of my mind all the time, that I have to have some places where I can go. That's one of the reasons why I've kind of kept in contact with James Guzman, because San Miguel de Allende is one of my final four. I've got 4 places that I've found that are relatively close to the United States where I think would be great places to live, and that's one of them. And I think it's a beautiful place, and it's probably my leading candidate right now. But I have to admit, I have never been there, so it may lose some of its luster once I check it out. Okay, as I said, to be an expat, you really have to have renounced your citizenship. And today I was listening to a podcast, Simon Black, the Sovereign Man, and I just, you can go, if you want to listen to this, it's really interesting discussion he had with a friend of his who renounced his citizenship about 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and the process that he went through even then, and it's much tougher now. I think now that you have to pay a fee, a fairly large fee, to untangle yourself from your slave masters here. And it doesn't excuse you from them coming after you for back taxes and things that you may have, you may be liable for up until your renunciation, whatever. So it doesn't explicitly get them off your back, but it probably will if you haven't committed anything wrong, or if the amount of money they could get out of you doesn't amount to much. But I want you to know there's a guy that was he was one of the pilots that was flying drugs in the United States for the CIA, and he turned whistleblower, or he was going to turn whistleblower, and they shut him up by having him arrested and put in prison for 25 years. Well, he just got out of prison a couple months ago, and it was discovered that he has over $100 million in Panamanian banks. Probably discovered due to the fact that all foreign banks, if they have money under deposit from American customers, have to report that information to the IRS. Well, gee whiz, I guess they knew that this guy owed him some money, so they're still after him, even though he paid his debt to society by spending 25 years of his life in prison for acting as a contractor for the CIA. He was actually thought he was helping the government do something. He was getting paid rather well for it. But apparently, the government, when they're going to commit a crime, they get somebody else to be the patsy and do most of the heavy lifting for them, so they can always say, well, he was just, and then cover up their part in it and let someone else take the fall. And then if he thought, well, it was worth it, I have all this money, I can live really comfortably the rest of my life, well, they just come and take that too, because with fines and penalties, he probably owes more than $100 million. He'll never be able to leave the United States because he'll be called a tax cheat, and they'll say he still owes them a lot of money. You don't think that couldn't happen? It's happening right now. As I speak, they're working on ways to punish this guy till he's dead. So there's a lot of reasons why people are leaving this country, and these are some of those reasons. And you want to make sure that you get your ducks in a row before you decide you're going to leave. You want to have a place to go to. You want to have a place where you can get residency. You want to have a place to go where you can establish yourself, have some kind of income. Your income might be Social Security you're due in the United States, from the United States. It might be a pension fund that you have. It might be, you might have a big stash of Bitcoins. You might have a bunch of gold. You may not be able to get your gold out of the United States. You might want to check on that, making sure how can you transport it to someplace else? How can you get your gold someplace where you can access it, or at least use it as collateral against loans? You might want to do some financial planning. You might want to talk to some people in that business area. Here again, I think James Guzman has some help for you. He's worked with he's worked under and with some people who consult with some of the wealthiest people on the planet. And he knows a lot of the things that you need to look out for and need to plan for. So I hope to have James on pretty soon to talk about some of this stuff. But certainly that's something that you need to be aware of if you're going to leave. And that brings us probably to the last thing. It's the fight or flight. Excuse me for clearing my throat so much. When you have to talk for the whole hour and you don't get a chance to take a drink, and you drank all your water just before the show started, there are times when you have to take a break and swallow, and that makes it tickle, and then you have to cough. And so my apologies again. The sound quality is probably from here to there. But I thought we would have a quick look at some of the most free countries in the world. And when you're looking at how free a place is, you really want to consider maybe looking at more than one source for rankings. And I'll give you an example. Freedom House, which is a fairly, I would say they're more of a socialist type of philosophy. So they have their own criteria. Now, I'm not saying they're socialists, but they tend to not think it's such a big problem. They're still looking at the issues that they're interested in are more personal freedoms, more individual liberties. They may not have any problem with level of taxation. They do want, I think they probably feel that money needs to be honest and things like that. They have a list of free countries in the world, and the top one is Andorra. I bet a lot of you don't even know where Andorra is. It's a small principality in the mountains between Spain and France, I believe. Australia. Australia, I don't think is such a free place. It's illegal to own a gun. It's it's kind of a socialist place. It's socialism at a higher standard of living, but it'll be like Ecuador in 1 or 2 more generations. Austria, which is, as opposed to Australia, Austria, which is in Central Europe, the Bahamas. Bahamas certainly have a nice climate. Barbados, again, a nice climate. Belgium, it's in the Eurozone. I don't know if so good about that. Canada. Now, Canada is certainly much freer than the United States these days. Cape Verde. I don't know exactly where that is, but I think it's off of Africa, possibly South America. I don't know. Have to look that one up. I'm kind of pride myself on my geographic knowledge. That's one I don't know. Chile, Costa Rica. I think those are good selections. Cyprus, maybe not so much. Czech Republic certainly is an emerging nation that's done pretty well coming out from under the Iron Curtain. It still has a long way to go. Denmark, another Eurozone problem there, I think. Dominica, I bet a lot of you don't even know where Dominica is. It's another one of those islands in the Caribbean. It's an island that's pretty cool. It's one of those places where you can buy a passport by just investing in the country. So they have a almost zero tax rate. They raise most of their money for government from people buying passports, and they call them economic travel documents. Estonia is interesting in that it's probably the leading economy coming out from under the Soviet Union rule of and domination of Eastern Europe. It used to be part of the USSR, actually. And it is just an amazing economy. They've adopted a lot of free market principles in how they govern. And it's not perfect, but it's doing a lot better in the United States. It's got fantastic economic growth, and it's not fake economic growth like they have in China. It's real economic growth. Finland, which is having a little bit of trouble now, but it's been a strong economy for the last 10 or 15 years. France, Germany, also having problems with Eurozone problems. I would stay away from anything in the Eurozone. Iceland, which is kind of left the Eurozone, and that's probably to their good. Ireland, Italy, more Eurozone problems. Kiribati, I'd have no idea where that is. Liechtenstein, I know where that is. That's a principality, it's actually owned by a royal family or some noble family in Europe, and they allow the people that live there to live tax-free. They don't own the property, but they allow them to. Their taxation is really like a rent they pay in their house, and that's it. And this ruling family provides all their legal and policing and stuff like that. And it's actually a pretty decent little economy going on there. Lithuania, it's another one of those small Baltic countries that were in the USSR, doing much better now. Luxembourg, another small principality. Malta, that's a Mediterranean island. It's kind of a cool place. I want to go there someday on a vacation. Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Nauru, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Palau, Poland. So my wife is from Poland. I've been there. I think Poland is, depending on some things, they're much freer than the United States. Other things, maybe not so much. But it's another one of those Eurozone problems. So I don't know how great a future it has until it separates itself from the rest of Europe. St. Kitts and Nevis, that's another one of those. You can purchase a passport by just investing in the country. You can buy some property or invest in there's some kind of a sugar fund. I don't. Let's see. We'll go down to St. Lucia, number 37. Number 38, St. Vincent and Grenadines. Number 39, San Marino. 40, Slovakia. Slovakia's used to be part of or connected to the Czech Republic. It was called Czechoslovakia. Slovakia hasn't rebounded nearly as well as the Czech Republic because they were more thinking that socialism was the right way to go, so it set them back a ways. Slovenia, from the war-torn Balkans area, Spain, which is kind of has a history of fascism, and I don't think they've been able to shake that. A lot of people kind of grow up with thinking that's the right way to do everything, and they don't seem to get away and have real true freedom there. They have periods of more freedom and less freedom, but never really true freedom. Sweden, which is kind of becoming a socialist hellhole as well. Switzerland is number 44, and I don't know why Switzerland would be number 44 on this list, because that's actually one of the places in Europe I would say is probably a little more free than the rest. And then at number 47 is the United States, just behind the United Kingdom and just ahead of Uruguay. So that was the Freedom House list, and like I said, their criteria is going to be different than someone who maybe has a right-wing agenda, and I pulled up one of those, and this is one from this is the what is this? This is Heritage Foundation. And Heritage Foundation tends to look a little bit more at economic issues, but they're still wrapped up in this rule of law. And I tell you, rule of law I think is way overrated. It depends on what your laws are. If you have a law that says it's legal for one man to own another, and you enforce that law, does that make it a free place? Well, not for the slaves. So I think that rule of law can be. I don't know if that's as good of as a rating index variable as some other things. I think generally the smaller the government is, the freer the country is going to be, because the government will have less and less power, and that even if they were corrupt, they're not going to be able to affect your life. But this is how they rated the countries, and I think that in general these are fairly decent ratings. I would disagree with a couple of them. Number 1 is Hong Kong. Number 2 is Singapore. And I think by any measure that you would have of the world of really economic freedoms and economic prosperity, those two countries are probably always going to be 1, 2. They're way ahead of everybody else. And why are they way ahead of everybody else? Because if they have economic freedom, they aren't. And you would think that Hong Kong, being in part of communist China, would have kind of a collectivist government, but not really. They don't. No, they really have very low taxation. They have hardly any government. They have very high population density. They have no natural resources, and it's probably the richest place on the planet due to the lack of government oversight. They just don't see any plus to feeding. Oh, my screen went blank for a second. They don't see any plus to feeding all these bureaucrats who produce nothing, so they don't. They limit their government by limiting the taxes. Well, anyway, under this rating system, the United States comes in behind Canada, behind Chile, behind Estonia, behind Iceland, behind Mauritius, behind Australia, Switzerland, and New Zealand. Oops, that was still Freedom House. I don't want to got on the wrong page here. Behind Denmark. I don't know about that one, but in at number 12, which is really high because I wouldn't think we're even that high. Notable countries behind them that I think maybe should be higher, but maybe not necessarily ahead of them. Poland is rated number 42 here, and I think it maybe belongs in a little higher than that. Iceland, 26. I think Iceland probably belongs a little higher than that, maybe not ahead of the United States. Yeah, let's see. Panama, number 60. I think Panama should be much higher than where it is. Panama has almost no taxation. Yeah, they have regulations, but they're not enforced. It's more like the old West of the United States, where there was a rule of law, but there wasn't anybody doing with the badge.
And then they have a country like Bulgaria, which is really struggling. It's, if you want to talk about a socialist hellhole, that's one. One of our contributors on their Facebook page, Maya Svet, I can't say her name without looking at it. But Maya is she's from Bulgaria, and she said it's hell on earth. That's a quote from her. And it's a wonderful place to visit, but if you can leave, then you can ignore all the stuff that really will get to you after a while. So she says no thanks. And she now is happily living in Finland. She's enjoying her life very much. And that just shows you what an increase in freedom can do to your health. I mean, I see her pictures of her smiling all the time now, or before she was always in some kind of a, oftentimes would have pictures flipping somebody the bird or something like that. She's quite a free spirit. I like Maya a lot. She's been an internet friend for a long time. She's truly a freedom-loving person. So we have all these other places in the world that are rated. There's even on the Heritage Foundation, which is I don't necessarily agree with all their requirements either, but I think on theirs, United States is 12. So that means there's at least 11 places better. So let's go back to this Freedom Index and let's pick out the things that are important for us. So property rights, I think that's probably crucial. So I'm going to put crucial on that one. Freedom from taxes, I think that's kind of the same as I pointed before, it's the same as property rights. Because if you let's say you cut down trees and you mill them yourself and you use the lumber to build a house and you build it all with your own sweat and blood and tears. You've created something out of, it wasn't nothing, but you've created something out of just natural resources, something of value. That's your property. It doesn't matter whether you're building a house, you're building a chair for your table, your dining table, or you're building, you're working for wages to build something for somebody else, and he's paying you a portion of what he expects to receive from what you're working on in wages. That's still your property. So taxes, I think, are still a form of property tax. Income taxes, I meant. Freedom of speech and religion. Well, I think this is very important also. I think it's important, it's crucial, but we think we have freedom of speech here, but you can talk to Erwin Schiff about the freedom of speech and see what he thinks about it. He's been in jail for a long time for complaining about the tax code. And I see that by clicking freedom of speech, the United States has now dropped out of the top 24 on this rating index. So this seems to be a fairly decent list. So let's go to limited government. And I think that's very important. I don't know if it's crucial. It probably is crucial. I'm going to put very important because a size of government certainly dooms you to higher taxes and slower pace of your economy. It's just going to slow everything down. But sometimes small governments can be they could be in a country that just has nothing going for it. It isn't growing. And the governments, just because the government is small doesn't mean it's going to be prosperous there, or you're going to have rights, or there won't be, sometimes you need at least to have enough government to protect property, or at least have coalitions of property owners that protect themselves and have the right to do that. I'm going to skip the gun rights for a second so you can tell how heavily weighted this is on this survey. Drug rights, as I said before, I think this is kind of crucial. If you can't, and I probably look at it completely differently than the people who are weighting these surveys. I think if you have laws against drugs, that means they're being able to regulate what you can put into your body, which means eventually they'll be able to tell you what you have to put into your body. It's kind of like how the Obamacare is working. You have to purchase this. Well, pretty soon you're going to have to purchase certain foods every month because it's part of your obligation to stay healthy. And you're going to be prohibited from consuming more than a certain amount of anything, this or that, even if you feel it's essential to your health. When you've lost drug rights, you've lost food rights, really. Freedom from corruption. Well, I'm going to skip that one for now. Freedom from inflation. I think that is crucial. And I put that in there. United States is still not in the top 24. Some interesting countries in there that we haven't mentioned yet today. Number 12, Peru. Really interesting place. But Chile is now in the number 1 spot on the things we've covered right up to this point. Hong Kong is number 2. And the things that in Chile they got 100 rating on freedom of speech, 84 on limited government, 45 on drugs. Don't know about that. Inflation 84, taxes 77, property 90. Some good property rights, taxes maybe not so much. Hong Kong is really beats them on just about everything except freedom of speech and drug policies. Well, they only rate 20 on drugs. So that's kind of interesting. And we're getting close to the end of the show here, so I'm going to take a peek with just the things we've selected for right now. The United States is number 57 at this point. And they are almost dead last. Their drug policy is 18. So suddenly Chile's 45 seems much more acceptable. Let's see, business freedom. I think that's pretty important too, because you have to have a way to make a living. And I hope this doesn't catapult us up above where we should be. We're now up to 41. Supposedly we have high business freedom. Give us an 89. So there must be some really horrible bureaucracies out there. But some of the places with good business freedom include Finland, Iceland, Jamaica, interestingly enough, Taiwan, Singapore, New Zealand, Netherlands, and Hong Kong, which is almost number 1 there. That's probably what they're best at. So I have freedom from corruption. Like I said, I just don't know if your government's small. I don't know how important that is. So I'm not going to do a thing there. But let's see how gun rights being crucial, how that changes everything. Because most of these countries have laws against guns. And suddenly the United States is number 14. So there you go. And we're only rated as an 80 there, but it's still the best out there. And so that just shows you if you're going to live and die on gun rights, you might end up in a slave country like the United States, where they tax you to death, and you're really outgunned no matter what. So you have to find out how is your survey rated, and what things are they really valuing when you're doing it. Taking these considerations of where you might want to live or visit. The best thing to do is, of course, is to travel, is to experience life in these places. When you do, you want to look at what people are doing and say, could they do this in America? Did they do this in America? I remember when we were at Playa del Carmen, a couple wanted to have a romantic dinner on the beach, and this restaurant set up a special table for them. They kind of put a white sheet between 2 poles that they buried in the sand, and they buried a little extension cord out to some lights that they put a green and a white and a red light on there, which is the colors of the Mexican flag. And these people enjoyed an anniversary dinner out there. And I remember thinking, well, this is really cool that they're doing this. This would be illegal in any beach in the United States. And who's being harmed by this? And it's just, and it just shows you come to accept things and not really see them for what they are when you live within this all the time. And yeah, it's just how it is. It becomes a normalcy bias, and just how you believe things are, and it's not really necessarily how things should be. And you need to get out and travel around to some of these other places that look like they might be interesting to you, and see if there are things there that you like better or fit your life better. And when you do, you want to get in contact with people like James Guzman, maybe Jeff Berwick, Simon Black, Doug Casey, and all these people that have advocated for years about living outside the United States and outside of the clutches of the IRS. because there is no greater criminal organization on the planet, in my opinion, than the Internal Revenue Service. And these people they will go to whatever lengths they need to track you down and to take everything you've got. They have no heart. They have no soul. They are ruthless. They just have a mission to enrich themselves at other people's expense. And they'll use anything that they can to twist it around and make it seem like you're the villain and they're the savior. And that's like I said, the guy that was a private contractor for the CIA and he had $100 million in a bank account in Panama, it's probably all going to be gone. And it won't be gone because it was a RICO statutes, which they could do probably if it was on American soil. It won't be gone because of this. It's be gone because he didn't pay taxes on it. It's the same way they got Al Capone. And this is how it is in the USSA. And this country was defeated a long time ago, a long time before I was born. It was defeated. We threw away the Constitution in 1871. It was after we were burdened with the debt from the Civil War, and the only way we could get out from that debt was to sign on to central bankers in Europe, where we owed most of the money to, and we incorporated as a country because as a corporation never dies. And they could continue to suck money out of us for that, and we're still paying for the Civil War. And we're paying for World War I, Spanish-American War, World War II, Korean War.
Running operations. That's from my Bush book of 1992. The Secretary of Commerce of Florida and the head of the Dade County Republican Party. So we've got Trump and we've got Jeb. Now Governor Walker of Wisconsin has proven his mettle as a strike breaker and therefore is rolling in Koch dough. However, he's also a moron, as you can see, and his countenance displays a certain what can we say, bewilderment by the modern world. So he's a thug, but he may not be the thug they need. Kasich just came out this week. Now the Kasich you see is a born-again Kasich. You know, he went through something like a nervous breakdown after he lost that.